Yo, what's up, guys? Spencer here, breaking down another UFC card for you guys. Today we're breaking down UFC Fight Night 20, Rozenstruik versus Gane, taking place Saturday, February 27th. And the reason I waited so late to get this video out was because I wanted to watch the weigh-ins and the face-offs today, make sure there wasn't any surprises based off the pre-fight reads, all the tape study. Sometimes the fighter you think is gonna win comes into the weigh-ins and looks terrible, or has a bad weight cut, and just wanted to make sure that the picks I was gonna give you guys, none of that influenced it for the worse, and I gave you guys the wrong pick. So with that being said, we're gonna hop right into it. We got a kind of a small card here. We got 10 fights, but still 10 fights to watch this weekend, and should be a lot of fun. Should be a pretty good card. So let's get into it, man. So first off, we got Maxim Grishin versus Dustin Jacoby. And we got Jacoby coming in as the minus 180 favorite, and Grishin on the buyback at plus 155. A little bit of a surprising line to me here. I mean, I get it, but I also don't get it. Grishin is a UFC veteran. I mean, not really UFC veteran, but a fighting veteran. I mean, his MMA record is 31-8. I mean, he's had a lot of professional fights, and he also has 2 draws. He's not overwhelmingly spectacular fighter. I'm not overly impressed with him. But, the one thing you can say for him is he's durable, and he has that experience edge, 100%. So, he's a guy that's going to be a tough out. He's going to be a tough test. He's a well-rounded fighter. He's a veteran. He's going to come in there ready to fight. He's going to, bring his skill set, bring what all he has, and he's going to give Jacoby quite a fight here, I think. On the feet, I think that Jacoby is the more active guy, the more volume fighter. I think that he definitely will win the striking exchanges. My one concern with Jacoby on the feet, though, is that, we saw this in his last fight that he got tired. I think, he gassed himself out. He was fighting a tough dude, but, Grishin is another tough dude. But Jacoby can get tired, and he can, open himself up a lot to get hit. He's not the strongest hitter. He does hit. Yeah, he's hit somewhat hard, but he's not a guy that's probably going to go in here and knock Grishin out. Just judging based off of, the last fight that I saw in him on the Contender Series. The guy he's facing was a tough dude, but Grishin's also a tough dude, and he's a veteran. I don't see Jacoby knocking him out here. So the way I'm looking at this is, it's either going to be Jacoby by decision or Grishin by decision, because I don't think it's going to go to the ground. Both these guys have really good takedown defenses, and they don't try to go there a lot. I would give the slight edge probably to Grishin on the ground, from what little we've seen of both these guys on the ground, but I think this fight stays standing for the most part, and I think it's just going to be a battle of cardio and volume. And with that being said, I think that Jacoby's going to get this one done, but it is concerning seeing him gas out in the last fight. And, Grishin does pack some power, so if Jacoby does get a little bit sloppy, starts tiring out, Grishin could catch him with a big punch and probably, hurt him or put him out. So I guess, you could think Grishin might be the one with the chance at the knockout here. I see a lot of people thinking Jacoby might knock him out, and I guess there's a possibility of that, but he's more of a volume guy, not a power guy. And so I think that, his path to victory is to win a decision here, by out-voluming Grishin. And I think that's probably the way it goes, but, anytime you have a UFC veteran like Grishin, and by the way, he looked awesome at the weigh-ins, he was jacked, he was ready to go. It's a little weird thing with, him taking off his necklace and his face mask and shit, for the weigh-in, and he was a little upset about that, but other than, that little kind of weird fluky thing, he looked good. He looked ready to go, and I think he's gonna bring it and give Jacoby quite a fight here. So I wouldn't be running to the window to parlay Jacoby, but I do think he gets it done by outvaluing Grishin, and I think that it's probably gonna come down to a 29-28 either way. So yeah, this is gonna be a close fight. If you put your money on this fight, just expect it to be a close fight. Is all I'm gonna say there. But I am gonna take Jacoby. I think he should get it done in this one. Next fight, we got Ronnie Lawrence versus Vince Cachero. And this one I'm not too interested in, guys. It's a kind of a low level fight. From what I've seen of these guys, they're both really active. They like to stand and bang, and you know, I'm not really high on either of these guys. I think this is one that I'm gonna pass on, and I think I would recommend passing on this one just because we don't know a lot about either of these guys. UFC wise, there's not a ton of experience. There's not a ton of fights that these guys have, against high level competition to really see their skill set. And I, you know, I think it's going to be pretty close either way. I think it's going to be a split decision or maybe, a unanimous decision, but probably a 29-28 as well. So overall, from a betting perspective, this is not one I'm very interested in. I'm probably going to pass on. But for the sake of the pick, I do think Ronnie Lawrence shows a little bit more promise than Vince Cachero. So my pick's going to be Ronnie Lawrence. I think I'm going to agree with the odds here. He's a minus 165 favorite, and Cachero's a plus 140 on the buyback. But yeah, this is one I really don't want anything to do with, guys, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time breaking it down just because, after watching tape, I don't have a lot of confidence in either guy, and they're both fairly low level. So I think that this is best to stay away. If anything, bet that it's going to go to the distance. But then, having said that, it's like a lot of times these low level fights they end up in a finish, just because one guy ends up actually being a mixed martial artist and the other guy's not, and he can't go 3 full 5-minute rounds. A lot of fighters in these other organizations, they can't really fight a full 15-minute fight. They just can't, not against somebody UFC caliber. The problem is figuring out whether either of these guys are UFC caliber. So not something I want a lot to do with, but I do think Ronnie Lawrence does show more promise. I think that he probably is the better fighter between the two and the rightful favorite here. So I'm going to stick with Ronnie Lawrence, and I'm going to move on. Next fight, we got Sabina Mazo versus Alexis Davis, and this is one that I'm a little bit intrigued with. So Sabina Mazo opens up at the minus 220 favorite. Davis on the buyback at plus 180. Davis is 36 years old. She's 19-10. She's on a 3-fight skid. Typical of what you see in kind of women fighters and the smaller weight classes when they get to this age, like mid-30s up until 36. That's pretty much on the upper end of the age range in the weight class. And women fighters can go into their 40s. They can, there's been fighters that have been able to be successful at a higher age, but against Sabina Mazo, man, she's a killer. She really is. She's 9-1. She's got a great submission game. She's overwhelming with volume and pressure, and something I was surprised about is she actually has quite a bit of a size advantage when they faced off at the weigh-ins. She actually is a much taller and just more solid fighter. Alexis Davis, I give her credit, man. For 36 years old, she looks fantastic. I mean, she's chiseled. She's got a six-pack. She's ripped, in great shape, and I think she's going to bring it. But, this kind of reminds me of the Sarah McMahon fight a couple weeks ago, where she's 40, it's a little bit different story, but I gave her the edge there in that fight. I think she was the more skilled fighter. And, I think that Alexis Davis is a very skilled fighter. I think that she, might even have the better skill set or had the better skill set in her prime. But it's just at the age she is now and on a 3-fight skid and, with Sabina Mazo being a killer, I have to agree with the line, and honestly, I think it might even be a little bit too close. I think that Mazo goes in here and kind of puts on a masterclass and dominates Alexis Davis, either for wins all 3 rounds, unanimous decision, or she probably finishes her. And I'm actually leaning towards the finish side of things. I think that Mazo gets her out of here either by submission or a TKO at some point. I just don't think Davis at 36 years old can keep up with the pressure from Mazo, and I think she's going to get tired in rounds 2 or 3, especially if Sabina, decides to go with a grappling or wrestling heavy game plan. I think that Sabina Mazo is going to get it done here inside the distance. I'm not sure if I'll have a play on that yet, but I definitely think that Sabina is going to get this one done, and she's probably a parlay piece for me. Next fight, we got Alexander Hernandez versus Thiago Moises. So this is an interesting one, guys. Neither of these guys are somebody that I'm very high on, honestly. Hernandez, he looked good in his last fight, but before that, he had lost a couple bad ones to like Francisco Trinaldo. I forget the other guy he lost to recently, but man, he hasn't looked too good. He hasn't shown to have a good chin. He's shown to have cardio issues. But, he's a decent fighter outside of that. And, this line, Hernandez is minus 240 favorite against Thiago Moises at this point. That line just seems a little off to me. I think this should be aligned a little bit closer. But with that being said, Moises looked terrible in his first fight against Michael Johnson. But, nobody really looks good against Michael Johnson if they're not a striker. That being said, Clay Guida did, but he had something to offer. And, Moises, after that Michael Johnson fight, we really didn't think he was much of a striker, but he came out there against Bobby Green. He was throwing some bombs. I still thought he lost that fight, though, and that worries me a little bit. I think he's 0-2 in the UFC, or he should be, even though he's 2-0. I think he was losing both those fights, and he kind of got a cop out on both of them. Really, he got the heel hook submission on Michael Johnson because Michael Johnson doesn't know how to defend submissions at all, and he got a kind of a robbery from Bobby Green on a decision victory there. So, it's a guy in Hernandez who I have trust issues with the chin and the cardio, or it's Moises who I have trust issues because I really don't think he's a good fighter, and I think he should be 0-2 versus 2-0. It's a tough fight here to call, I think Moises 14-4, Hernandez 12-3. I think, Hernandez was coming out in interviews saying, it's hard to see this one going outside the first round, I think he's a little bit too cocky. I think that he thinks he's going to run through Moises, and I don't think that's going to be the case necessarily. I think Moises showed us a little bit more of a diverse skill set in the last fight. I don't think that this one gets done in the first round. I'm not sure Moises can submit Hernandez unless it's like a late submission in the third round, with a choke, because Hernandez does get tired, and those submissions when you're tired can really be a problem. But I think I think Hernandez does have the better skill set in this one. I think that he does have what it takes to get this win. Do I think he can get a finish? Probably not, to be honest with you. I don't think he can finish this. So for me, it's can he, weather the storm? Can he go the full 3 rounds? And can he win 2 of the rounds without getting finished himself? Can his cardio hold up to get to the bell, Can it get the 15 minutes? Because, when Hernandez gets tired, the submission's there. And also, Moises was throwing bombs against Bobby Green. If he lands one of those when Hernandez is tired, it could put him out because Hernandez does not have the best chin we've seen. That being said, Hernandez does have teammates fighting on this card and he wants to prove a point. But, lately when we've seen teammates fighting on the same card, it doesn't normally go well for all of them. Most of them lose is what ends up happening because they're almost trying to show off. They're trying to, best their teammates, have the best performance. And they get a little sloppy. And I fear that Hernandez might fall into that fallacy a little bit. I think that he might get a little bit sloppy in this just because he's a little bit cocky. He thinks that he should run through Moises. And also another weird thing was, first of all, the weigh-ins, Hernandez needed the blanket or whatever to cover up because he had to drop everything to make weight. But then at the face-offs, that was weird. Hernandez was laughing and smiling at Moises, and Moises was kind of like, what the hell? And then he started laughing too, and they were just smiling and laughing at each other, and it was just a little bit of a weird scene. And I don't know, man. I think Moises might be a sleeper in this one. I can't pick the guy. I think he's 0-2 in the UFC. I don't think he's very good. I think Hernandez is the better fighter, has the better skill set, but he does have some issues here that could come into play, And it's really tough for me because I want to parlay Hernandez. I want to say that he's a lock, he should win this fight, 10 times out of 10. But man, with his cardio issues, with his chin issues, and with Moises just never really showing us what he really has, and kind of being a spotty fighter, and it's just tough. I think it's probably more like 6 out of 10 Hernandez wins this at this point, and I think. Yeah, I think Hernandez was, on track to be one of these upper echelon fighters in the UFC. But now after his, last 2 or 3 losses here, it's been kind of bad. I don't think he's up there. He doesn't have that, ceiling anymore. I think he's more of like a 10 to 15 ranked fighter. That's his ceiling. I don't think he can crack the top 10. But Moises shouldn't even be in the UFC really. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick Alexander Hernandez here. I do think the line's a little bit wide. I mean, and I say that kind of sparingly because I think the line is right, but Hernandez does have those cardio and chin issues, and he's a little bit cocky, and I just think that all of that plus Moises isn't as bad as we initially thought. I think that it should probably be closer in this. But I think the odds makers have it right. I think Hernandez probably should be around a 240 favorite. So yeah, give me Hernandez. I'm not going to spend any more time on it, but beware of this one, guys. I wouldn't, race out to parlay him or anything, but he should get it done. It's just, I think it might be a little bit closer than everybody thinks it's going to be. All right, next fight, we got Alex Caceres versus Kevin Croom. Another weird fight here. Kevin Croom coming back. He was a huge underdog against Roosevelt Roberts. Got that one done with a submission. Rocked him too. I think Croom, he's a good fighter. He's not bad, but he's again like a middle of the pack guy. Like maybe he can crack the top 15, but not the top 10. Caceres kind of the same deal. He's not the best fighter. He's okay. He beat Chase Hooper, but Chase Hooper is shown to not be very good either. But Chase Hooper is a kid, right? He's like 21 years old, right? He's a baby. But yeah, Caceres pieced him up on the feet, but Hooper has no striking, so that's not much to take out of that. I think Kevin Croom does have the striking advantage here. Caceres is probably going to have the reach advantage and the height by a small margin. At the face-offs, it wasn't as large as I expected, honestly, which bodes well for Croom. If this does go to the mat, I think that Croom has the advantage. I think that he'll probably get a submission if it does hit the mat. But yeah, I think the striking, it could be close. I think Croom does have the advantages here, and I don't agree with the line. I think that, Caceres is a minus 200 favorite here. Kevin Croom at plus 170 on the buyback. I think that's off. I think this should be more of a pick 'em. And for that reason, I'm going to go with Croom. I think that, he's had his issues, but I think he's a good fighter. I think he's, decent at least, and I think that Caceres is being overvalued here. I think that they're both kind of in the same echelon of fighters. They're both kind of not super high ceiling, but not super low ceiling or super low floor either. And yeah, this just seems like one that is mislined, and I think that Kevin Croom is probably has the advantage pretty much everywhere. So give me Kevin Croom in this one. Yeah, I'm kind of confident in it. I'm probably going to play it straight, honestly. I'm not going to parlay him, obviously, but I might play him straight at that price. I think that's way off, so going with Kevin Croom in that one. Angela Hill versus Ashley Yoder. This one's a little interesting to me. Angela Hill's 12-9. Ashley Yoder's 8-6. Angela Hill is a minus 380 favorite in this one. Yoder is a plus 300 on the buyback. That line is off, guys. Like, that line is off. At the face-offs, Yoder's the bigger girl. Like, not by a ton, but she's more solid. She's the bigger girl. And I tell you what, her game is to take you down and push you up against the fence. And there's a good chance she does that to Angela Hill, guys. I mean, Angela Hill, she's improved her takedown defense, and she does have the striking advantage by a mile. And I would not be surprised to see her finish this and get a TKO. But, I mean, you can't count Yoder out. You can't, she's a tough girl. I don't think you can say that she's a plus 300 underdog in this spot. I mean, Angela Hill is kind of a skinny, like string bean type of, human being. Like she's just a little, kind of a little body type, right? And, a girl with a bigger frame like Ashley Yoder is going to be able to probably outmuscle her on the cage. And, Angela Hill's improved her takedown defense. It might not be very easy for Yoder to get a takedown, but I think she's going to get it there at least once or twice. I think that she's going to win one round from takedowns. So, if you're parlaying Angela Hill, you're going to be sweating a little bit. I think this is going to be a 29-28 decision, or she might get a finish. I'm not discounting that. But I think there's a good chance Yoder comes out here and wins round one or round two, So it's tough for me to pick Angela Hill in this spot. I think you have to. I think she's the better fighter. But, in the UFC, when girls know they're this big of a dog, and when guys too, when they know they're this big of an underdog, they're going to come out and they're going to fight and they're going to try to take advantage of your weakness. And, Yoder knows she has the advantage in the grappling and the size, and I think that she's going to use that to her advantage. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if she put on 10 more pounds, before the fight actually happens, and had that significant weight and size advantage on Hill and tried to implement that game plan and just kind of wear on her. That being said, I think that Hill wins on the feet all day, and if she can keep this standing, she wins this fight all day. But man, even pushing her up against the cage, I don't know if Hill's gonna have the strength to consistently fight that off for 3 rounds. It's just a toughie to call. I mean, I'm going Angela Hill. I think that she's gonna win this fight, and she's the rightful favorite. But minus 380 is absurd, and I see a lot of people parlaying her at that. I'd be aware of that, guys. This is too high of a price for Angela Hill. She's a 12-9 fighter. Yes, she's been on a good run as of late, but she's not a miraculously good fighter like some of these other women like Nunez or Shevchenko or anything like that. Granted, Ashley Yoder is not very top tier either, but Hill should not be a minus 380 favorite against anybody, much less somebody, with a similar record as her with a height and, size advantage. And, this just seems like a sketchy spot. And the dogs have been barking this year, there's been a lot of big upsets with heavy favorites. And, this is a spot where it's just a little bit sketchy again. So I'd beware of this fight. I'm going to go with Hill, but, maybe leave her out of your parlays. As I think this is quite a bit closer than the line indicates here. All right, next fight, we got Pedro Munoz versus Jimmy Rivera. Jimmy Rivera minus 150. Pedro coming back at plus 125. Jimmy's 23-4. Pedro is 18-5. So this is a pretty even matchup here. It's going to probably come down to a decision. I think both these guys are going to throw a lot of volume. I think Rivera is going to throw a little bit more volume. I think... he's not a knockout artist. He doesn't hit extremely hard. It looks like he hits hard, but it never really does a ton of damage to his opponents. Pedro's a guy that's shown to be a little bit chinny, not super chinny, but a little bit chinny. But I don't think that'll play a factor in this fight. I don't think that Pedro's going to sleep here. I don't think either of them are going to sleep here. If anybody, honestly, I think Pedro's got the power to put Jimmy out, but Jimmy's got, a thick skull. He doesn't get rocked very easily, so... Yeah, this is going to be a tight one, as the line indicates. The thing that was concerning about Jimmy Rivera is he came to the scale with sunglasses on, which is never a good sign because normally that's a sign that you're trying to hide your eyes and a sign of a bad weight cut because when you're dehydrated, your eyes, they turn red. They look like you look tired, exhausted, and that's something people pick up on, and that's why fighters wear sunglasses to hide that sometimes. But the good sign was that he took him off for the face-off, so that obviously is saying that he's not scared of his opponent seeing that, or it went away by the time the face-offs happened. Either way. But yeah, this is a sketchy one for me. Originally when this fight was scheduled a couple weeks ago, and it got canceled because Jimmy Rivera pulled out for personal reasons or something. But I was on Rivera, and... after seeing him today, Pedro's a little bit bigger guy. He's got, I think, more power in his hands. I think, he's a better striker, honestly. Rivera's got more volume and probably wins a decision. But man, Pedro's live here, guys. I think I might be switching my pick here. From last week, I was on Rivera pretty solidly on Rivera, but after seeing the weigh-in today, seeing the size difference and everything, I'm gonna switch to Pedro Munoz. I think that he's kind of been underrated as of late. I think it was, who did he fight? Was it Marlon Moraes, where he got stopped, right? I think he got stopped against Marlon Moraes, and that one he didn't look very good. But Marlon Moraes is a different fighter than Jimmy Rivera. It's just a tough one to call here, and I wouldn't recommend putting this in your parlays or throwing a lot of cheddar on either guy. I think it's going to play out very close. I do think Jimmy's going to throw more volume, and so he probably does win the decision if it goes to the cards, but I think Pedro's got the more power, and I think that he could potentially get a knockout in this spot or a TKO finish, maybe even a submission. If he rocks him and gets him hurt and takes the neck, it's possible. It's hard to see Jimmy Rivera losing on the ground because he's a pretty good wrestler. And the volume, I think this goes one of two ways. I think Rivera wins by decision, or Pedro wins by a knockout or TKO or a finish, just a finish in general. But yeah, the way Jimmy looked at weigh-ins, it wasn't terrible, but it always scares me when fighters put the shades on. So I'm gonna switch to Pedro Munoz. I'm taking the slight dog in this one, but not one I want to throw any cheddar on really. But yeah, I'm gonna take Pedro Munoz in this one. I think that this is a really, really close fight, and if you have a lean one way or the other, you go with that. But definitely don't break the bank on this one. There's plenty of other better spots on this card. Next fight, we got Montana De La Rosa versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Silva is the minus 130 favorite. Montana plus 110 on the buyback. Silva is 7-1. De La Rosa is 11-6. This is another one that's kind of low level. I don't really want a lot to do with this one. Not impressed with Bueno Silva. She's her striking is terrible, in my opinion. I don't think she's a good striker. I think her path to victory is to take it to the ground and get a submission, which is what she does in most of her fights. And then you have De La Rosa on the buyback. She's a really tough girl, not overwhelmingly good at grappling or striking, but her striking shown a little promise. She can hit kind of hard, and she's pretty durable. She's strong in the clinch. She's just brawny, tough girl. And this is one where I think Silva's going to struggle to get it to the ground and get a submission because Montana's not going to tap. I think that Montana could piece her up here, honestly, on the feet. So yeah, I'm going to go with the slight dog in this one. I'm going to go with Montana De La Rosa. Not one I really want a lot to do with either, but I think this one does have a good shot of cashing. I think Montana is the better fighter all around. I don't think Silva's that good of a fighter. She's more of a jiu-jitsu person, which against tough girls like De La Rosa, you're not gonna get those knee bars, you're not gonna get those arm bars because they're just not gonna tap. Those are all pain. It's not going to put you out. So, people with a strong mindset aren't going to tap to those. Perfect example is Tony Ferguson. I mean, his arm freaking inverted, and he's still stuck in the fight because he didn't want to tap. He's too tough. He's not going to tap to pain. They feel pain all the time. The only thing that's going to make them tap or put them away from a submission is the choke, right? Taking the neck and putting them to sleep. And, I don't see Bueno Silva getting that. I think that, for her to do that, she'd probably have to get a triangle on De La Rosa from bottom. I really don't see De La Rosa falling for that. I think that, her coaches and her team are going to be aware of that and know that this is Silva's game. And I think she's well coached. I think she's a tough, durable girl, and I think that her striking is better than Silva's. So yeah, give me Montana De La Rosa in this one. Actually kind of confident in it. I think that one will cash, but again, probably not a parlay piece. All right, next we got Magomed Ankalaev versus Nikita Krylov. Ankalaev is minus 310. Krylov is plus 250 on the buyback. Ankalaev is 14-1. Krylov is 27-7. So this is kind of a wide line here at first glance, guys. I think this is going to be a pretty good fight, actually. I think it's going to be pretty back and forth, and it probably goes to a decision. I don't see a finish happening here. Krylov's a tough guy. Ankalaev's a tough guy. I do think Ankalaev is probably the better prospect, the more hype behind him, the higher ceiling. We kind of seen the best of Nikita Krylov, but he's no slouch. He's a solid fighter. He comes in there to fight hard every time. He puts on a show. He's kind of one of those guys that just, I don't know, he knows how to fight. He's a fighter. He goes in there and fights. He doesn't win every fight, but he only has 7 losses. I mean, this guy fights to a lot of decisions, but he's a dog. He goes in there and he fights a lot of close fights. And I think this one's going to be much closer than the line indicates. I do think, I think Magomed Ankalaev is the side here. I think that he has a chance for a knockout. He has the better, chance at a decision. But the line is too wide. I hate the minus 300 on this. That Ankalaev is kind of unproven. Like, I know he's 14-1, but he's kind of new. He's not really. He hasn't fought a ton of high level competition outside of Kutalaba, but Kutalaba, isn't the best. He just kind of goes in there like the Hulk and tries to smash people, but he's not very defensively sound. Krylov is going to be much more defensively sound. This is probably going to fight to a close decision here, honestly, and I do think Ankalaev gets it done, probably by unanimous decision. But minus 310 is a lot to lay on this, as it's going to be a close fight. You're probably going to be sweating a little bit. So I'll take Ankalaev. I think that's the side. I think you should be safe with Ankalaev. But again, another parlay piece that you would think would be safe, but it's a little bit sketchy. It's going to be a close fight. I do think he probably gets it done. I don't see Krylov really getting a finish. His only chance would be a decision. But I think it's going to be hard to do against Ankalaev, and I think Ankalaev probably gets this one done by unanimous decision, probably 30-27 or 29-28. But if it is a 29-28, you're going to be sweating for your money right there, and it's not something I want to lay a ton of juice on. Maybe take a small shot at Ankalaev inside the distance, but other than that, I think it's a stay away from a parlay standpoint. But yeah, give me Ankalaev in that one. I think it should, he should get it done. All right, last fight of the night, we got the main event: Cyril Gane versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And this it's another interesting one between the heavyweights, guys. 2 weeks in a row, we got, kind of a not as big of a favorite, but we got Gane at minus 260. Got Rozenstruik on the buyback at plus 210. It's a tough one. 7-0 for Gane, 11-1 for Rozenstruik. Rozenstruik's a guy that through watching him, I haven't been too impressed with him, really. He's not the best striker. He's not the best cardio. He's kind of slow and plodding. He doesn't throw a ton of volume. I think that, Gane's going to have much more volume in this fight. But it's that knockout punch, right? It's the Derek Lewis knockout punch. Although I don't think he's got as much power as Derek Lewis. I don't think that he has as much opportunity for a knockout in this fight, because Gane doesn't need to take this to the ground. That's not his MO. He will be happy to stand at distance and pick you apart on the feet. And one thing that really, opened my eyes here was the face-offs. Gane is a much bigger man than Rozenstruik, which is kind of weird to say, because you look at Rozenstruik and you think, man, that is a big boy, and his nickname is Biggie Boy, right? But Gane's a bigger man, and he's less weight, and he's faster, he's quicker, he's bigger, like built. He just seems like a bigger man. And with the speed advantage and the volume advantage, and he has a solid takedown game, a solid wrestling, solid grappling, solid submission game. It'd be hard to see this one go in the distance, guys. I think that, Gane probably gets this done in the inside the distance, but if you want to hedge off that, I think I haven't checked the lines for the under on rounds. I'm not sure what it's set at, but that could be a good look. Inside the distance, this fight doesn't go the distance is a good look on this one. But yeah, I think this one should be Gone all day, and honestly, this is probably one of my safest parlay picks of the night. I think that he is the much more well-rounded fighter, and although it's sketchy to bet on guys that are, not too experienced in terms of people they fought, he's only got seven fights, 7 wins, no losses, but it always kind of sketches me out. But I think that it's warranted in this one. I think that he is the real deal, and Rozenstruik is a guy that I'm not too high on. He barely beat Overeem. He shouldn't have beat Overeem, but Overeem got caught lacking in the last 10 seconds and got hit with a hard punch. And Overeem's chin is shot. We all know that now. And for a guy like Overeem to dominate Rozenstruik for 4 rounds and 4 minutes and 50 seconds and just get caught is not really a good look. And I think a guy like Gane that does have a chin, that does have the power, that does have the speed, that has the skills and the technical ability, I think that he's just going to piece Rozenstruik up here and probably get it done by submission or a TKO. So give me Gane in this one, pretty confident in it. And I think that's probably a really safe parlay piece. So just to recap, I think that, if you're going for a parlay in this one, I'll give you guys kind of a little teaser. I think that Mazo and Gane is probably the safest 2-legger you could do, and that should get you close to even money. And if you want to throw in maybe Alexander Hernandez, I wouldn't hate it. If you want to throw in maybe Angela Hill, I wouldn't hate it, but be careful with those other two. I think that with Gane and Mazo, though, you're 100% safe. So those are my 2 most confident picks of the night. But that'll do it for this card, guys. If you want my exact bets or, a little bit more in-depth analysis, feel free to check out my Patreon. I'll have those picks updated before fight time tomorrow. I'll probably have them by noon tomorrow. So you'll have a good chance to look at those before the fights start. But other than that, take care. Hope you guys all have a good weekend and do well on this card. And let's try to make some money. Peace out, guys.